A man in Las Vegas drank a bottle of water every day because he thought it was one of the healthiest choices he could make. Instead, it put a chemical used in rocket fuel into his liver. He didn't survive it, and he wasn't the only person that brand hurt. Behind bottles that promise pure and natural are wrongful death lawsuits, and even Class 1 recalls. The FDA's most serious type. Some of those brands are still sitting on store shelves today. So, today I'm going through 12 bottled water brands with arsenic problems, bacteria recalls, and even worse, all hiding behind labels designed to make you feel safe. 12 brands. Real records behind every one. And we're starting with a name you've probably got in your fridge right now. Stick around, because after the brands to avoid, I've got 6 bottled water brands that actually earn the word pure. Number 12. Sam's Choice Purified Drinking Water. We're starting with a brand almost everyone has bought at least once. Back in 2008, the Environmental Working Group tested 10 bottled water brands and found Sam's Choice had contaminant levels exceeding California's cancer safety standard for carcinogenic disinfection byproducts, along with traces of caffeine and other pollutants. Walmart has changed the formula since then, adding minerals back into the water, and that test is almost 2 decades old, so this isn't a don't touch it entry, but you're drinking a chemistry set from 2008 with 0 updates since. That's not reassurance, that's an unanswered question you're swallowing every time you twist the cap. That one's a maybe. The next brand's problem is a lot less deniable. Number 11. Deer Park Natural Spring Water. When Consumer Reports tested 35 non-carbonated waters back in 2020, most brands came back essentially clean. Deer Park crossed even the smallest threshold the testers flagged. At one point, 21 parts per trillion of PFS, the so-called forever chemicals. To be fair to this brand, that number is still legal, still small, and still lower than what you'd find in a lot of tap water. But it's proof that even the brands marketing themselves as premium and pure aren't automatically chemical-free, and it's worth knowing before you pay extra for the label promising otherwise. Deer Park's problem is a number so small it's almost academic. The next one isn't academic at all. It's a straight-up bacterial contamination, and it's still sitting in stores under names you'd never suspect. Number 10. Niagara Bottled Private Label Spring Waters. If you've ever bought Acadia, Wegmans, or Big Y spring water, there's a decent chance it came out of a Niagara bottling plant. And back in 2015, the actual spring feeding that plant tested positive for E. coli. Nobody got sick, and every finished bottle that was tested came back clean. The contamination was caught at the source before it ever reached a shelf. But one spring, one contamination event. A dozen store labels wearing the same water. Read your bottle's fine print next time, because the brand name tells you a lot less than you think. That brand at least pulled the bad batch before it shipped. This next one let the bacteria go out the door. Number 9. Meyer Steam Distilled Water. In November 2025, Meyer pulled over 38,000 gallons of its steam-distilled water off shelves across 6 Midwest states, after a floating black foreign substance was found in the jugs. The FDA later classified it as a Class 2 recall in January 2026, meaning it could cause temporary or reversible health effects. Nobody has said publicly what that substance actually was. The recalled lot is off shelves now, so if you're buying Meyer water today, you're not drinking that batch. But a company that recalls 38,000 gallons and won't tell you what was floating in it isn't protecting you, it's protecting itself. Small recall, regional problem. The next brand has a bigger name and a worse number. Number 8. Berkeley Springs Water. Berkeley Springs recalled over 151,000 bottles in September 2024, after coliform bacteria showed up in their purified and distilled gallon jugs, sold across Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. Now, coliform itself usually isn't dangerous, but it's the kind of thing regulators treat as a major red flag, because it often means something got into the water that shouldn't have. It stayed regional, and no illnesses were reported. But a bacteria recall on a water brand is exactly the kind of thing you'd want your bottled water to never do. Not even once. Not even on a small scale. And here's where things get even more interesting. The next brand's issue isn't a recall at all. It's what the lab found sitting inside a bottle that was never pulled from shelves. Number 7. Volvic Natural Spring Water. Volvic markets itself with French mineral water prestige. But when Consumer Reports tested a wide set of waters in 2019 and 2020, Volvic was one of only 6 brands that came back at 3 parts per billion of arsenic or higher. Right at the edge of what CR itself recommends bottled water stay under. Now, it's still well inside the federal limit of 10 parts per billion, so nothing here is illegal or an emergency. But you're paying a premium for a brand that's supposed to be cleaner than your tap water at home, and the independent lab found it sitting right at the line their own testers get nervous about. That's not what you want from a bottle with a French mountain on the label. And if you think that's surprising, what happens when the word spring water on a label might not even be true? That's not hypothetical. It's the lawsuit the next brand is fighting right now. Number 6. Poland Spring 100%. Natural spring water. Poland Spring is currently fighting a lawsuit that claims its spring water isn't spring water at all, just ordinary groundwater dressed up with a nicer name. In December 2024, a federal judge in Connecticut let the core fraud and deception claims move forward, ruling it's still an open question whether Poland Spring meets the legal definition of spring water in 8 different states. Now, as of right now, there's no verdict, and I want to be upfront that this is an accusation making its way through court, not a proven fact. There's also a smaller detail worth knowing. Their carbonated version tested positive for a trace level of PFAS, around 1.66 parts per trillion, well under any legal concern. But the bigger story here is the label itself. If a court eventually agrees that spring water is just marketing language, that's a brand-defining problem, not a footnote. And it's why Poland Spring lands right in the middle of this list instead of the bottom. Before we get into the top 5, if you want to know which bottled water brands actually earn your trust, stick around. Because number 1 on this list isn't a brand with a bad lab result. It's a brand that doesn't exist anymore because of what it did to the people who drank it. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Number 5. Topo Chico Mineral Water. Coca-Cola. When Consumer Reports tested 47 waters back in 2020, one Coca-Cola brand came out on top, for all the wrong reasons. Topo Chico had the highest PFAS level of everything tested, 9.76 parts per trillion, the worst of every product in the study. Now, here's the part I actually want to give them credit for. Coca-Cola upgraded their filtration afterward, and a follow-up test showed the level had dropped by more than half. That's real improvement, and it's the kind of thing more brands should be doing instead of staying quiet. Still, if you're drinking Topo Chico for that trendy mineral water taste, know it started this decade at the top of a list nobody wants to top. A recall is a company reacting to a mistake. Federal criminal charges are a company caught making one on purpose. And that's exactly what's coming up at number 3. But first, one more brand pulled bottles off shelves for something found in the water itself. Number 4, Fiji Natural Artesian Water. Fiji got hit with a real recall in 2024, pulling about 1.9 million bottles of its 500 milliliter size sold exclusively through Amazon, after internal testing found manganese and 3 types of bacteria. The FDA classified it as a Class 3 recall, their lowest severity category, meaning it wasn't expected to cause serious harm. But a recall covering nearly 2 million bottles is still a recall. The recalled batch is gone, and what's currently sold isn't affected. Still, a lot of people treat this brand as the gold standard of premium bottled water, and gold standards shouldn't have a contamination recall in their recent history at all. Number 3. Crystal Geyser Natural Alpine Spring Water. This one isn't about what's inside the bottle. It's about what the company did to make that bottle. Crystal Geyser's parent company, CG Roxane, pleaded guilty in January 2020 to federal charges of illegally storing and transporting hazardous waste. For roughly 15 years, the company dumped arsenic-laden wastewater from its filtration process into a man-made pond at its Olancha, California facility, nicknamed the Arsenic Pond, with concentrations testing over 8 times the legal hazardous waste limit. They were sentenced to 3 years of probation and $5 million in fines. Now, I want to be fair here. This is a case about how the company handled its waste, not direct proof the water you'd actually drink from a bottle is contaminated. But when a company spends 15 years illegally dumping arsenic waste instead of disposing of it properly, that tells you everything about how seriously they take the arsenic near their water supply in the first place. Crystal Geyser's problem was 15 years old. This next brand's arsenic problem is still showing up in lab tests this decade. Number 2. Starkey Spring Water. Starkey has had an arsenic problem that keeps showing up. Back in 2016 and 2017, Whole Foods recalled over 2,000 cases after regulators found arsenic above the legal limit. Then Consumer Reports tested it again in 2020 and found levels between 9.49 and 10.1 parts per billion, right up against, and occasionally over, the 10 parts per billion federal cutoff, the highest of every brand in the study. 2 separate class action lawsuits were filed over it in 2019. Here's what makes this one worse than most. Nobody's retested it since 2020. This brand is still on shelves at Whole Foods and Amazon right now, with an arsenic history that keeps brushing against the legal line, and no fresh lab data telling you whether that's changed. Until somebody runs that test again, I'd leave this one on the shelf. Starkey's problem is a line on a chart nobody's rechecked. Number 1 didn't cross a line. It ended a company, and it ended a life. Number 1. Real water. Real alkalized water. The worst brand on this entire list isn't even sold anymore, because it doesn't exist anymore. On November 22nd, 2024, a 71-year-old restaurant owner named Milo Hurst died. And his family's wrongful death lawsuit, filed that February, connects it back to a water brand that had already been tearing through families years earlier. Real Water put out an alkaline water that tested positive for hydrazine, the same toxic chemical used in rocket fuel. It was linked to acute liver failure in multiple people, including children as young as 7 months old. The FDA issued a Class 1 recall in May 2021, their most serious level, reserved for products that could cause death. The Department of Justice followed with a consent decree the next month, and the company filed for bankruptcy by the end of that year. Nevada juries have since awarded victims close to $3 billion in one verdict, and over $5 billion in another. Real Water doesn't operate anymore, and you won't find it on a real store shelf. The only danger left is a handful of sellers illegally reselling old recalled stock online. But this is the one entry on the list that isn't a watch out next time you shop. This is what happens when a bottled water company gets it catastrophically wrong. And it deserves to sit at number 1, so nobody forgets it. That's the list of brands doing the damage. Now, let's talk about the ones actually earning your money. And if this list is saving you from making a bad purchase at the store, a quick like helps more people see it before their next shopping trip. Number 6. Liquid Death Mountain Water. Still canned. Yes, the brand with the death metal branding and the skull on the can is actually on the Trustworthy list, but only the still version. Liquid Death cans its water in aluminum instead of plastic, which sidesteps the microplastic leaching concerns that come with sitting in a plastic bottle for weeks. No independent lab has flagged a PFAS or contamination concern for the still version. I do need to draw a real line here though. Stick to the still water. The sparkling version has an unresolved PFAS claim floating around that hasn't been settled one way or another. So, if you're going to buy this brand, grab the still can, not the sparkling one. At least until that gets cleared up. Liquid Death earns trust through its packaging. The next brand earns it through the actual test results. Number 5. Spindrift, Perrier, and LaCroix. Sparkling. If you're a sparkling water person and you made it through that PFAS testing data earlier feeling a little nervous, here's your answer. Out of every sparkling water, Consumer Reports tested in 2020, these 3 came back with the lowest PFAS levels of the bunch, all under roughly 1.2 parts per trillion. Now, nobody's claiming this category is spotless. We already told you Topo Chico topped that same list, but if fizzy water is your thing, these 3 are the best of that specific category, and that's a real distinction worth knowing before you load up your cart with the wrong can. These 3 win by comparison. The next brand doesn't need a comparison. It's audited on its own merits. Number 4. Essentia Ionized Alkaline Water. Essentia's manufacturing facilities are audited annually by third-party auditors, including NSF, and are certified to SQF Level 3, the highest level of food safety certification attainable. Their process involves reverse osmosis purification, followed by ionization to raise the pH. Now, here's the honest caveat. This is purified tap water, not water pulled from a natural spring. The alkaline marketing on the bottle likes to imply bigger health benefits than the science actually backs up. It's a clean, well-audited process. Just don't buy it expecting some kind of miracle water. Buy it because it's genuinely well made. Number 3. Evian Natural Spring Water. Evian publishes its own quality information and has a clean arsenic testing history. That's a brand actually putting some of its work in public, instead of just slapping natural on the label. Here's the split moment worth being upfront about. Evian is currently facing a lawsuit filed in July 2024, alleging its natural and sustainable marketing is misleading because of microplastics found in the water. A judge rejected the brand's request to throw the case out in March 2025. So, this is still ongoing, not resolved. I want to be accurate here rather than imply it's already been cleared. I'm still including Evian here because a company facing an open microplastics question isn't unique among natural water brands right now. 5 other major brands are named in the same wave of lawsuits, and Evian's underlying safety and arsenic record has stayed clean through it. Evian's got an open legal question hanging over it. Number 2 has never had one. Just a report you can pull up yourself every single year. Number 2. Mountain Valley Spring Water. Mountain Valley has been bottling from a single protected spring in the Ouachita Mountains since 1871, and they publish a detailed water analysis report online that lays out their results. They also sell in glass bottles, which sidesteps the plastic leaching concern entirely, if that's something you care about. Between the single source, the public report, and the glass option, this is about as close as bottled water gets to showing its receipts. Mountain Valley shows you the report every year. Number 1 does that too, and then adds something almost nobody else on this list bothered to test for at all. Number 1. Icelandic Glacial Natural Spring Water. The cleanest brand on this entire list is Icelandic Glacial. It's fully accredited by NSF, and it publishes its actual NSF test reports and facility certificates online, covering both the source spring water and the finished product, not just a one-time claim. On top of that, they've published a 2026 microplastics report for both their glass and PET packaging, something almost nobody else on either list has done. The water comes from the Ulfa Spring in Iceland, and the certification isn't a marketing claim. It's checked on a rolling basis by people with no reason to lie for the company. If you want the one bottled water brand where you genuinely don't have to think twice, this is it. Before we wrap up, here's how to spot the difference yourself the next time you're standing in the water aisle. NSF certification means an outside lab is actually checking the plant and the product, not just once, but on a rolling basis. Look for the actual NSF mark on the bottle, not just the word certified floating somewhere in the fine print. Spring water is a legal term. It has to come from an actual spring. But purified water just means it started as tap water and got filtered. That isn't automatically worse. It's simply a different product wearing a nicer sounding name. And if a brand publishes an annual water quality report you can actually go read, that's one of the strongest trust signals there is, because it means they're comfortable with you checking their homework. 12 brands with recalls, lawsuits, and one that flat out killed people, versus 6 that actually publish their numbers and let outsiders check their work. The pattern is simple. The brands that hide their testing are the ones you should worry about, and the brands that hand you the report card are the ones that earned your trust. And look, this problem isn't just sitting in the water aisle, it's a couple of aisles over too, hiding behind labels that look even more trustworthy than a water bottle ever could. What if I told you 11 of the best-selling syrups in the country, some with maple leaves, log cabins, and even entire state names printed right on the front, don't have a single drop of real maple in them? We already went through that whole aisle in a past video, including the exact 5-second trick that exposes every fake bottle on site. So if you haven't seen it yet, go watch it next, because the real bottle and the fake one might be sitting right next to each other on your shelf at home.